this is an interesting triangulation theory that people have been speculating about. And there are a couple of caveats here, Joe. Number one, we do have lowering income tax and lowering services experiment. It's called Florida, Texas, and a couple of the states where they have lower income tax and more consumption tax.
Millions in government waste. This shocking revelation will leave you speechless. Check this video out.
We pay a lot more in real estate taxes here, something we consume. Putting that aside, the really interesting issue is we're at the lowest unemployment of our lifetime. 4%. Where are all these workers going to come from? What do you think, Joe, now that you've heard the two other panelists here discuss it? What are we trying to get to? Where is the destination at the end of this term? Trump's lame duck. He can go wild here. He's not running for re-election. And, what do you think he wants to see? Do you think he just wants to cement some sort of legacy? And if so, what's that legacy? And how do these actions equal his goals and legacy?
No, listen, I agree with what David was saying, Jason. And it's a really important point also that we should mention is that the last 4 years, the economy's looked okay, but part of that is because government's been hiring like mad. And so the point he made is that actually, having twice as many people, harassing me. I just got back yesterday, no action on an audit that's been harassing me on for 3 years. They found nothing. Having twice as many people doing things like that or running TSA or pushing papers around in the Department of Labor doesn't actually add output to the economy. And so, it does seem like it makes a lot of sense. Let's take 1 million workers out of the consulting class around DC, out of the paper pusher class around DC, and let's actually deploy them to the actual productive economy. Elon and Trump have both been saying that. I think David's 100% right. And it is true. A lot of my companies, thanks to the tariff stuff, are looking to build stuff here. So I'm not a huge fan of tariffs personally, but they definitely make sense for things in defense. They definitely make sense for negotiating with countries. And it is true. It is pushing certain people, including me, to build some more things in America.
Government expansion doesn't equate to economic strength. Hiring more bureaucrats doesn't create innovation. It only shifts resources without increasing productivity. The real transformation will come from private sector technology and automation. This is exactly why companies like Palantir are positioned to lead the next economic shift.
Here's where tariffs make a lot of sense. If you have markets where there are domestic alternatives and or where things are fundamentally commodity, there's no reason why tariffs can't work to create the incentives to redomicile economic productivity inside of the United States. That's a slam dunk, I think.
And Chamath, there's another twist on that too, which I think we should all acknowledge, is that America does have some really tough environmental laws. Despite what Jason may think of me, I actually don't want my daughters growing up with messy air, messy water, screwed up country.
Oh, I don't think that of you. I know that you're a nature guy.
But
you're like a classic Bush nature guy.
But here's the thing. In China and Indonesia and all these other countries, they are just shitting over the environment as they make things. I think tariffs are very reasonable in that case. Like, it's not fair to make it more expensive for us because we're doing it well, and then we outsource it for them to destroy things, right? So there are some things there where it does make sense.
The U.S. can't afford to outsource both its manufacturing and its pollution. Tariffs tied to environmental responsibility encourage ethical production without sacrificing competitiveness. With AI-driven logistics and automation, domestic industries can remain efficient while maintaining high environmental standards.
And what I would say is the other side of the tariff knife is that if there are markets, though, where you're making something that's fundamentally innovative, where you are but one maker, the problematic part of where tariffs really affect the U.S. consumer is then the price of that product, of which there are no competitive alternatives, can go very, very high. And that's inflationary. And I think that slows down consumption. And then if that consumption is not just of something that's a nice to have, but a must have, then it becomes problematic. And so you could see where tariffs could impact certain industries. For example, if there are innovative drugs, I think that's problematic. If there are innovative technologies of which there's only one vendor, that's problematic. So all of those need to get sorted out. But on balance, in commodity markets, like look at autos. Autos is a perfect example. There are so many purveyors and providers of autos. There's OEMs all around the world. And so to have a compensatory system doesn't seem like an unreasonable thing, where it's a tit for tat tariff. But in other markets where if you need, for example, a specific piece of equipment from ASML to build a chip, and now all of a sudden that machine is 25% more expensive or 30% more expensive, and they pass that cost downstream, it becomes very speculative and it becomes a little bit more fragile, I think.
This is dangerous though, right, Chamath? Because I agree with you in theory, but then there's something where, if everyone's lobbying for their thing to be an exception, you end up getting this very crony system that you don't necessarily want, right? So you have to be very careful how you define these things.
Tariffs work well in commodity markets, but in high-tech industries, they can slow progress. Artificially inflating costs on essential innovations, like semiconductor equipment or life-saving medicine, hurts the consumer and weakens national competitiveness. A balanced approach is crucial.
Exactly. So this is why I think like sector by sector, you can probably go and pass the smell test and say, if there are multiple providers or if it's somehow commodity, I think it's easier to absorb the tariff in the short term. Maybe that's the right way to say it, which is if Trump believes everything should be tariffed, then instead of debating if, to your point, maybe the right thing to debate is when. And you have to put some things on a much longer glide path so that you don't just create inflation out of nowhere or you don't hold back American business or American consumers.
Well, this is a key point because you do need to have predictability to make investment and reciprocity. So really two important points Chamath's making here. One, on reciprocity, these things haven't been looked at for a while. I'm not sure how they got so out of whack, but just putting some facts to this, Chamath's exactly correct. We get placed, when we send cars to the EU, they get a 10% tariff, but when we get their cars, it's a 2.5% tariff. Who let it get out of whack? I'm not sure, but why not make the reciprocity perfect and just, hey, you say 10, we say 10, you say 2.5, we say 2.5. And that would make, I think, a lot more sense. Just to put some numbers here on government employees, it's not as bad as people make it out to be. A lot of our spending is non-employee related, but it is, if you look over the last two administrations, we have added 1.2 million, 1.3 million employees across all.
I disagree.
And hold on, let me just finish the sentence so you have the facts and then you can disagree with the facts. 1.3 million additional employees added. This does not include contractors. And so we don't know what USA was doing with NGOs and contractors. And I think that's where we do need to get some clarity. And to Chamath's point, this has all got to become predictable. You cannot put tariffs on, off every week, or else how does your friend, Dave, who wants to do the LED lighting, or you're encouraging to do LED lighting, know if they should build a factory and invest $10 million in that? You disagree with the number of employees? You want to address that?
Predictability is key for long-term investment. Sudden tariff changes create uncertainty, discouraging companies from committing capital to U.S. manufacturing. A phased, strategic approach ensures economic stability without unnecessary inflation.
Yeah, look,
go ahead.
The government accounts for 30% of GDP in the United States. That's an extraordinary sum. So I
was talking just about the employees. That's a much smaller percentage.
But that doesn't matter. The direct employees of federal agencies is a fraction of people that are employed indirectly by government spending. This is super important.
Sure.
Because as we all know, many government agencies write checks to large contractors, subcontractors, and third-party service providers that do the work for them. So the money gets transferred. They then employ the people and they do the work. So it doesn't technically show up on federal government payroll registers, but these are people that are indirectly employed by federal spending. That's super important to acknowledge, that a large percentage of the U.S. workforce is indirectly supported by federal dollars.
Yeah, and it's gone up massively with the NGOs too. So you have about 4 million people employed by contractors in D.C., 1.6 million more at the states actually by federal spending, and then you have the NGOs. No one knows the NGOs. The Biden administration took down the data I used to see things in 2020. So we don't even know how much money, but we know it was hundreds of billions. And so it's pretty crazy. The number one thing about how DOGE is not being done fully is that Elon's doing an amazing job, whether or not he cuts 500 billion or a trillion or a lot more. But the senators and the congressmen are not willing to take it out of their bill. Their reconciliation bill right now, they're talking about cutting 1 to 2 trillion. So rather than this is over 10 years.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
If it was equal to what Elon was doing, it'd be at least $5 trillion. And I push a bunch of them. They say, the Congressional Budget Office and all these things. And I'm sure there's some tough things there, but this is crazy. We need to see what these cuts need to be on DOGE, and we need to cut $5 trillion. And none of these people have the balls to do that. There's not the political will to do it, is my interpretation.
The sheer scale of indirect government employment is shocking. Millions of people are paid through federal contracts NGOs, and state-level subsidies, yet they aren't counted in official workforce statistics. This distortion makes it nearly impossible to have an honest conversation about government spending.
And just
cojones. Let me just show you one chart to back that up. I have my new dcsocialmediadc for the week. Look at this, Chama. You want to talk about software and waste. 35,855, according to DOGE, breaking news, ServiceNow licenses on 3 products only being used by 84 people.
Oh my
in our
God, are you
government.
kidding me?
11,000 Acrobat licenses with 0.0 users. Desgraciad! Absolutely abhorrent. And I'm saying it right now. I want an investigation into procurement. Who sold this? Who bought it? This could be a crime. This could be fraud. That could be kickbacks. I'm saying there could be.
I don't think it's
Number
that.
two.
But I do think you have to look at the earnings of these companies and question where's all of
Totally
this.
correct.
Number two.
Totally correct.
If ServiceNow ever wants to work with the government again, Mr. President, our president, I want them to pay us back for the unused licenses, and I want a full audit for the last 10 years. If they don't pay us back that money and give us a credit,
hold on, listen.
banned forever.
Government procurement needs a complete overhaul, starting with full transparency and independent audits. Right now, billions are vanishing into bloated contracts with no accountability. If this waste continues unchecked, it won't just be an economic issue, it will be a national security issue. Every dollar lost to inefficiency is a dollar not spent on innovation, defense, or infrastructure. Fixing this isn't optional. It's essential for a functional economy.